want to just say hello.
Hello.
You'll notice throughout this presentation, I'm going to have this device. It'll be hard for you to see it at all times, but this is a communication system. And some of our students don't use the traditional way of talking to communicate. They use an AAC system. And I just want to model throughout today that this is totally easy to use in some regards. So hello.
Hello. Nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet everybody. Welcome. So my first thing is I want to know a little bit more about you. So I'm going to pop up a poll and I'm going to launch it to ask, what do you do? Yay. Okay, so we have a lot of classroom teachers in the house, a few special educators, some support staff, math coach or two, and some people with other roles. That's awesome. What I would give to spend most of my days with math teachers. I married one to hang out with math teachers. So I'm excited to see all of you. Today, I am going to share a website with you. I'm going to do most of the navigation during our time together, and then I'll share the link as we sort of move forward with the presentation today so that you can access it at your own time later. I always have trouble going through PowerPoint presentations later, like looking for that thing that I was trying to find and remember from that presentation I attended. So I'm trying a website today, and I would welcome your feedback if it's too hard to navigate or you're like, oh man, bring back the slides, but trying something new today. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. And here's our website. So the objective of today is for me to share a few practical ways to include all students in the general education setting. And my primary job is I work with kids that have really complex profiles or complex bodies. And it's my job to help make sure that all kids are included in their community schools to the maximum extent possible. And I have been sort of obsessed with this mission since I was a little kid. And so here we are today, and I work for the Vermont Interdisciplinary Team, and it's a team of people that make this happen. So school teams that have kids that are complicated put in requests for our support, and we help them in a variety of ways. And my sort of connection to the All Learners Network is I've been following John Tapper around for years and wishing and hoping that we could collaborate together. And so as of last year, we've been studying the way kids on the autism spectrum show their math thinking. So that's been pretty fun. So all really does mean all, and I love that John's network stands for that. Here's a picture of just me and my silly family, my husband who works at MMU, he's a high school math teacher, and our two kids, Olivia and Zoe, who are 5 and 2. And then, yeah, my contact information if you need it after this. So some tech etiquette, just really quick, turn on your video if it's possible. If you've got some noise at home, that's fine. Headphones are great. Stay muted unless you're speaking, but please, if you have anything to say, jump right in. Use the chat. We've got Tammy as our chat monitor today. Tech questions might be able to be answered there. If your connection gets lost, jump back on. And the most important thing that's going to make today successful is your participation. All right. Our agenda. So throughout, I'm going to try to model some of the strategies that I coach other teams to do with students that are complex. So you'll notice some of my language includes information that I want you to have and then information beneath that. So it's sort of layered of what I might say when I'm working with a student. So our agenda today, first, we're going to learn a few new concepts and tools that you can do in your classroom tomorrow. So really my hope is that all of this can be directly applied. So that's going to be me do. I'm going to model the skill I do. Then we're going to look at an example together, and I would welcome you to rip apart my example and put it back together again. We're going to do that together. So we're going to sort of model the skill. Next, we're going to use the concept of scaffolding complexity for something that's upcoming in your classroom. So I would welcome volunteers to say, hey, I'm doing this tomorrow. Let's brainstorm together. And then we're going to reflect on our time together. And after today, you'll sort of be on your own, but hopefully you'll sort of be able to collaborate with more team members. With that being said, I'm going to jump to our entrance activity. I am also as obsessed with John Tapper as I am with Shelley Moore and her Dr. Baked Potato video. So I'm going to play this for you. Let me know if for some reason you can't hear it. It's about 7 minutes long, and it's going to sort of be our entrance activity to today.
Welcome to 5 More Minutes, useful videos in about 5 minutes that support the teaching and learning of all students. I'm your host, Shelly Moore. Today's episode is called Dr. Baked Potato. Okay, so this story is going to start out a little weird, but just stay with me, okay? You see, there's something that not a lot of people know about me. Like, I have this passion. Like, it keeps me up at night. I just love baked potatoes. I mean, I really love them. They're so delicious. I research recipes. I've perfected the double bake. I love all the toppings and how they work together to create the most wonderful flavor explosion in my mouth. I love baked potatoes so much. I actually went back to school to learn more about them, and I wanted to learn all I could. So I entered a PhD program in baked potatoes so that I could become Dr. Baked Potato. I told you, it's weird. Just stay with me. Okay, so now I'm this baked potato expert, and now I need to find a job. And I'm so lucky because I find out that this great high school down the road is looking for someone exactly like me. They need a teacher of baked potatoes. I'm so excited. Like, what are the odds? So I have my interview and I get the job. Yes. I get into my classroom and I spend the whole week before school starts getting it ready. I put up baked potato posters. I have a timeline of the history of baked potatoes and their influence around the world. These students are so lucky. And then it's the night before school. I'm getting the last minute details ready. I have 25 baked potatoes all lined up. Okay, let's be a little bit more realistic. I have 35 baked potatoes all lined up. I have timed it so when the students walk in, the potatoes are coming hot out of the oven. I have the toppings measured out. Everyone has the same amount of bacon bits and chives, and the morning arrives. I am ready. And in they come, these lovely students, and I serve every single one of them their individually perfected baked potato with perfectly proportioned toppings. You're welcome, I say. This is for you, I say. I hope that one day you are as passionate about this potato as me. And then I step back and I enjoy my masterpiece. And then I look to my left. One of my students isn't eating. Why aren't you eating? This is a work of art. What is wrong? And you know what they say to me? I don't eat meat. He doesn't eat meat. What do you mean you don't eat meat? Excuse me. Hi, yeah, Dr. Baked Potato here. Yeah. So I have a student who doesn't eat meat in my class. So do you have any like bacon bit EAs who can come down and like pick the bacon bits? No, I can't. I'm teaching. Well, just anyone then. They don't have to be a bacon bit specialist. Just anyone will do. Okay, hurry. They're coming, I say. Just wait. And then I look to my right. Now there's an entire table of students who are eating. Why aren't you eating your potato, I say? You know what they said? We don't eat dairy today. We don't eat dairy today. You've got to be kidding me. Hold on, just excuse me. Hi, yeah, me again. Yeah. Okay, so now I have this gaggle. Can I just send them to you and you can help them take the butter off their potatoes? No, I can't. I'm teaching. What do you mean you're busy? What do you even do down there all day? End scene. First of all, our EAs have better things to do than pick off bacon bits from an already served baked potato. And second, do you know how hard it is to take melted butter off of a hot potato? This is what we're doing to our support teams. It is exhausting for everybody, and it isn't effective or efficient. And you know those kids who are waiting for their retrofit supports, you know what they're doing? They're throwing their potatoes at the people who are trying to eat. Okay, let's just back up the potato truck here for a second. As a teacher of baked potatoes, my expertise is still absolutely required to design the purpose or the goals for this group of potato eaters. But potato expertise isn't enough. To design for inclusive classrooms, there's a few things we need to do. Number one, we need to know who is eating the potatoes. Who are the students? What supports do they need? And we need to know this before we serve the potatoes, not after. Number two, we need to know what the goal is. And we need to understand that goals are connected to concepts, not to activities. What this means is if the goal is to eat a baked potato, then yes, everyone needs to eat a potato. But the goal is not for all students to eat the exact same fully loaded baked potato with all the exact same toppings. Students are diverse. They're going to need different toppings. Number three, planning for this range of diversity means that we anticipate the variety and complexity of toppings. And to ensure that everyone has the same opportunity and access, we teach all of the options to all of the students. This is called scaffolding complexity, and it's an additive model of making goals adjustable rather than relying on a reductive model of assumed average. And number four, this one's hard because we have to let go. We need to hand over this choice of challenge to the students. We let them choose the toppings for their potato. And the best part, if we design this way, these decisions are based on what they can eat rather than on what they can't eat. No adaptations needed, no modifications needed, no retrofitting needed. And our support teachers and EAs, their roles will start to shift away from triage and towards supporting students to be in charge of their learning, helping them to decide what adjustments will be best for them. Okay, are you ready for your challenge? I want you to actually go make baked potatoes. Like, it can be for an event or for family dinner. Make sure that everyone has a potato and then offer the toppings as a bar of options. And then the best part, sit back and watch. See the magic of inclusion unfold before your very eyes. Thanks for watching, everybody. Don't forget to subscribe to the 5 More Minutes YouTube channel and look for us. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and don't forget, go enjoy your baked potatoes.
All right. So coming back to you guys, and I'm gonna ask question. What did you think? You can use the chat box, you can talk out loud, whatever you want to add. We're a small enough group that feel free to sort of unmute yourselves and just share your impression.
Jackie, this is Tammy Myers. I love how this very complicated concept of inclusion was related to something so simple like baked potatoes and creating baked potatoes and making sure you are making baked potatoes for all and not just what you love. I love how simple the concepts have merged. That was great.
Anyone else?
I love the idea. My name's Andy. I love the idea of everyone might eat the potato, but how it's dressed up and decorated or loaded is different. And I've been wrestling with that in my classroom. Like, how can I get everyone to do the concept where they can enter it and be successful?
All right, I'm going to try to move us along to how. So I'm going to screen share again and see if I can move that. Well, hold on, I'm going to go to my chat for a second. She made the concept of teaching different types of students so easy. I know it's not that easy in real life, but I love the metaphor to get us going. All right, I'm going to go back to my website here. I'm going to take us to this slide. So I want to just share a picture with you to start. So let's see. I can classify and order objects is under number 1, and it gets more complex as you move up. Number 2, I can recognize the structure of a bar graph, picture graph, and line plot. Recognize the structure of a tally chart. Number 3, I can use bar graphs, picture graphs, line plots, and tally charts to read data. Number 4, and you can sort of see it gets harder and harder. This is an 8th grade standard. I apologize for the little font on the top, but you can see the 8th grade Common Core state standard is right here up high. And all the skills that you need to work on to get to the standard is outlined here. I'm going to sort of ask you again, what's your first impression of this?
This is Tammy Myers. I like how you can see the big picture of this standard from a very basic level to a much more complex level, and all the in-betweens. I like the big picture visual.
So bringing it back to our baked potato reference for a second, the goal is that everybody's working on graphs, and what level they're working on is going to, is outlined on this graph from beginner to the standard. Has anyone seen anything like this before?
No, but I would think that this would help to differentiate your classroom, to put all the pieces together that you need for all the students.
So it used to be in sort of, I'm going to stop screen sharing for a second. It used to be in the land of special education that a special educator would decide what is important for a child to know and related to math. And most of the time, special educators choose time and money because it's easy and it's a life skill, right? But being in the math classroom is also a life skill. You think about all the things that a kid learns when they're inside of a math classroom, and you just can't top that. So there's 40 years of research that says, no, special educators, stop choosing time and money for kids' individualized education plans and start choosing math standards. So now in the state of Vermont, that is a requirement. And the AOE is looking for special educators to say, no more time and money. How is what you're teaching in an IEP directly related to the math classroom and directly related to the language arts classroom? And so they came up with some documents that help support this work. So that's sort of where we're going to dive next. Before I do that, does anyone have any questions or comments? Just want to keep checking back in. You guys are so small when I screen share that it's hard to see all your faces. All right, I'm diving back in then, but feel free to interrupt anytime. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my resources and I'm going to click the continuum. So the continuum is a document that the I-team put together, and we scoured the internet looking for all of these resources that exist, and we wanted to put them together in one place so that everybody could have access to them and that you wouldn't have to spend your time searching and searching and searching. So we put together the Common Core state standards along with the essential element, which is sort of the essence of every unit of study that you do in your math classroom. And that is basically the lowest expectation that we would ask of any of our students is what is listed as the essential element. And then it sort of breaks it apart into different levels, which is what you just saw in sort of my scale that I made for you all. And then activities that align with those standards that all kids might be able to access. Before I show you the continuum, I'm just going to sort of explain that this underneath the continuum, there's the reference guide. So it really explains where each resource came from in much more detail than I'm going to talk about right now. I'm going to click on this link called the Testable Essential Elements Math. And what comes up is grades 3 through 12. And I'm going to just go to middle school because it's somewhere right in the middle. And if I click on any one of these, I'm going to click on a 6th grade standard for a second. What I see is the grade level standard all the way to my left, the essential element in the middle, And then the linkage levels are all the different activities that lead up to the grade level standard. So there's no more guesswork, right? Sometimes I work with math teachers that are like, they are there, they are, you know, ready to go. They want to support the student that I'm there to support too. But often I might hear, I don't know how to teach kindergarten, right? Like I'm a high school math teacher. I don't know how to do this. And this is a resource that really helps support that foundation. But it should never be the math teacher has to do it or the special educator has to do it. What I learned more than anything else from coming up with this presentation for you all today is it really needs to be a collaborative effort, and whatever that looks like in your school. But I cannot tell you how many times I was like, Steve, that's my husband, like come look at this. Is this right? Does it make sense? You know, and luckily I got one of my math problems wrong and he caught it before this. So it really is so important that you collaborate. And then the second page, or sorry, this one is the third page, it maps it out for you. So it really shows how the skills build on each other. And again, this isn't something we'll sort of look at very closely at the moment, but you'll have access to all of these links later so that you can use that to support your work. John Tapper's high leverage concepts and the essential elements, that work, that overlap work hasn't been completed yet. I know that Glenn Patterson has been working on that, but it's not done. So one of the things that still has to happen, particularly if you use the high leverage concepts in your classroom, is really looking at the essential element and just cross-checking that it's, you know, important and it's on the high leverage concepts list. And then below are the continuum documents. So I broke out every grade level. When you click on one of these later, so I'm gonna just click on a high school one for the moment in time. What you'll see is the Common Core State Standard on the top. The essential element is right below it. The concept, the skills, the big idea, the essential question, those supportive levels that you sort of saw again on my big map, and then tasks that are beneath them. So if you want to show that a child can do this, here's how you might do that. These documents are quite dense, and I wish that they were more widely shared, because I feel like when I show them to teachers and they have time to dive into them, they're like, where has this been all my life? Like, how did I not know this document existed? And it becomes a game changer for the work in which you can do collaboratively with one another. I just want to take a minute to pause for questions, comments, thoughts. Have you seen anything like this before?
You said that will all be shared with us at the end, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Let's see if I can share it right now, just so you have it. I just put it in the chat. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes when I try to do like screen share and looking at somewhere, it just gets complicated. So I'll share it later. But I think at this point, it does make sense for you to be able to ask questions, being able to sort of look at it a little bit further. Any other thoughts? I can just keep going.
Jackie, who was is this you who did this, or I'm sorry if I missed it, just because it's overwhelming to see this.
Yeah, no.
What effort was this?
So you know how some kids get modified grades, and on the report card it'll say, okay, this student, it's an M, but she got an A, it's modified. And those same kids typically don't take the standard assessments that everybody else does. Previously in Vermont, those kids took something called the dynamic learning maps. And it was sort of an online test that the students took relatively around the same time as their same age peers. The people for dynamic learning maps are the people who made the essential elements. Dynamic learning maps was very costly, and so our state decided to go a different route, which I think, I don't know, some of the other IT members did. I'm not sure if we've made a decision about what we're going with yet or not. Not important for this conversation. Anyways, but the dynamic learning maps are the people who made the essential elements. However, there was still so many floating documents from different states and different places that would be really helpful. So Maureen Nevers, who is our augmentative communication specialist, helped to take all of those documents. It was like a labor of love and put them together into one place. So a colleague of mine made the continuum. But the essential elements were made with, lots and lots of educators working collaboratively to make those standards. All right, I'm going back to screen sharing mode. All right. So how many people are using proficiencies and not Common Core state standards in their work anymore? That's one of the challenges of my work. I'm in about 30 different schools. Is every school does things a little bit different. And so I'm just going to ask of you guys, my language, how I might talk about this or what I might show you might not make sense for your context, but to just sort of take what I'm sharing and, we can figure out together how you might apply that. So one of the challenges that I find for the students that I support around proficiencies is that by setting a target that is labeled you're proficient or you're not, can be a little stigmatizing for the students that I support. So this is an example of saying what is attainable or what is proficient for this particular student. So I just created another sort of graphic saying it's an 8th grade standard that's working on formulas of volumes and cones and cylinders and spheres. And here's sort of the scale to get there. And I put a check mark where I thought that student could reasonably attain given some pre-teaching experiences. So sort of my version of a proficiency document for a child with complex needs. So one of the challenges of this work is at first it can be really time consuming, particularly during COVID-19. I watch my husband be awake most nights until 11:30 or 12, trying to lesson plan for the next day with some kids hybrid and some kids in person and just the complexities of COVID-19 I can't pretend to totally understand as a classroom teacher. So thinking about really quick, easy ways to communicate and collaborate using something as simple as Google Docs and just sort of sharing information so that you can co-plan together without necessarily needing to meet. And I've been supporting teams in doing that work this year and really those initial meetings and just figuring out how to work together, special educator or other specialists. So some of my students have big teams, 15, 16, 17 people, including consultants from vision and hearing consultants that all can work together to make education more seamless for these kids. Knowing that classroom teachers don't necessarily have the time, I wanted to share some lesson planning options that might be helpful in your work. So one of the things that we like to do on iTeam is something called the 5 steps. And it's just sort of a checks and balances. So what are my targets? What are my outcomes from this lesson? How am I going to teach it? What materials might I need? How am I going to know that the student has learned? And what do we need to do in advance of the lesson to make sure that we have all the materials we need during the lesson itself? So it could look as simple as this. So here's one that I made with John Tapper and Glenn Patterson around subitizing. So this one was for a younger student, but the student would be able to answer how many more makes 5, and the student will use manipulatives to make 5 with an assortment of manipulatives. I'm going to use an egg carton, a 5-frame. I'm going to play Go Fish with 5-frame cards. Here's the materials I need. For this particular student, iTeam and All Learners Network was helping to assess the students, so they were going to send videos to us for review. And one of the things we were targeting was peer connections for this particular student. So, but something with as simple as this gave everybody all the information they needed to know what they needed to do for this particular student. The lesson that I tried to model today, I wanted to sort of get away from the individualization, which does often need to happen with our really complex students, but thinking about that, planning for everyone, if we make a lesson ahead of time with that particular learner in mind, we don't necessarily have to go back and rebuild it again for that student. It just saves everybody time and energy. There's some alternative ideas that you can look at later, like using sticky notes to share and things like that that are listed. And then some supports I wanted you to know that exist. So there's a UDL toolbox that you can sort of dig into later. That's all mostly free resources that help universally design a classroom. For our students that are in your classroom that need augmentative communication, so the device that I've been sort of doing a bad job of modeling for you guys right now. Those strategies are sort of listed in there. How might a student who's hesitant to participate? And then all of this is sort of built on this idea of the least dangerous assumption that we don't know. We don't know what some of our students who are nonverbal know. Communication is the biggest barrier for those students. And if we assume that they don't know and 12 years go by and we realize that they do, that was a pretty dangerous assumption that we made versus putting them in the classroom and hoping that they are learning and gaining information and that we're not making them have any prerequisite skills to be in the classroom and then learn later, oh, you know, they didn't get all of that, is sort of the least dangerous of those two options. And then just on the bottom, a little reminder that there's so many things that you're working on in a math classroom. So 9 executive functioning skills that we use in mathematics. So part of the reason that all students are in the math classroom is not just to learn math. So quick pulse check on the group. I went through those documents incredibly quickly. I just wanted to let you know that they were there and what they were, not necessarily dive deep into them. That's sort of the work that we can do together in small groups coming up. But I just want to take a pulse. Do you want me to go slower? Do you want me to talk more about a particular document? Or are you ready for me to move forward? If you guys could sort of use the chat to let me know how you're feeling, or a thumbs up, thumbs down, like thumbs down, keep explaining, thumbs up, let's move on. All right, good. It sounds like everybody's good so far. I'm gonna dive back in then. So this is the part that makes me nervous, full disclosure. So I am a special educator by trade. I'm not a math teacher. So please, please, please feel free to be like, lady, you are wrong. Also, I would like to share with the group that I learned a very valuable lesson when I was making this example lesson for you all. So I was doing it for the past few days. And last night I finished it around 10 o'clock and I was looking for one more image to upload. And I found the entire lesson that I had just created done better by someone else. So I linked it to the presentation because I was like, this guy did it, he did it better. It would have taken me 1 minute to fix and add than it would to have done what I did. So full disclosure, I learned a valuable lesson, which is Google lessons before you make your own. Okay, here we go. So going back to resources and going to my example. So I picked distance time story graphs, not for any other reason than sometimes, given all of the documents that I just shared with you, it still says not applicable. So it'll have like the state standard, and then on the essential element side, it'll just say not applicable, which is a pet peeve of mine because we can make anything applicable, in my humble opinion. So I intentionally picked this one because I wanted to show like, okay, well, what happens when all of these great resources fail you and nothing is listed there? So I tried to sort of make a harder one for myself. So here we are with distance time story graphs, and here is the Common Core State Standard, and listed under the essential element is NA. Okay, what do I do? So I'm going to take you to my 5 steps. lesson here. So just a few codes. So I tried to give you information that says access point. The access point with the little asterisk is when I'm talking about a student that has been identified as having a complex need. And a plus sign is sort of beyond targeted instruction. Again, I am not a gifted and talented teacher, so please interrupt with other ideas and suggestions. We can make this even better together. So what do I hope that kids learn from doing story graphs? I hope that they learn that they'll be able to show understanding of distance time story graphs, that they'll be able to match a given story graph to a multiple choice story element. So an extension would be that students would be able to make their own story graph or extend the story graph with more segments of their own creation. So my little star indicates for a child with complex needs that they're going to be able to navigate within their AAC system to the words stop, fast, slow, same, and different. Those are called core vocabulary words, and they are helpful for kids that use AAC to use them across their day in a variety of flexible ways. So thinking about the word stop, well, you can stop what you're doing and just using it across different contexts, like stop, my turn, or I want to go, or I disagree, those sorts of things that you can find within an AAC system.
Tell.
Oops, I'm pressing buttons. So teaching. So how did I picture this? I'm going to try to sort of walk us through this. The class will begin with the teacher at the whiteboard, and she's going to model how to create a story graph by asking her students to tell a story about a boy named Hussein. Hussein loved to go on bike explorations, and the students are going to decide where Hussein goes. The teacher is going to draw the student-led choices as the students share out. So what happens next? Students get into small groups with story cards and a large graph and are asked to create their own story by picking up story cards from a deck. The cards should be CVI friendly, which is cortical vision impairment. I'm going to show you some of the things related to that in a minute. And the graph paper should be large and used with large Sharpies, so big black Sharpies and red Sharpies. Students should write down at least one reason that they picked the story cards and leave their justification at their stations. And then it's time for a gallery walk. Kids walk around the room, they look at everybody else's graph, and they either defend or agree based on if they think that the person got it right or wrong. The kids come back together, they talk about it. After that, it's independent work time. So this comes back to sort of the scaffolding complexity of where everybody's at in your classroom. So if that was particularly hard and some kids were still really working through that, then they're going to go back to their small group and they're going to keep making story cards, and maybe the teacher would be there to assist. Or they might have a matching activity with different story graphs and sort of get a little bit more complicated. They might sit down with the classroom teacher to learn how to add numbers to the access to make learning more quantitative. For the student that uses an augmentative communication system, maybe it's using the AAC system to direct their partner on what should happen next in the story graph. One of the things that I put in the very beginning of this presentation is this idea of I do, we do, you do. And that is really different for a student with a complex need. So I really want to say, like, it might be that I do for 2 weeks before I ask you to do something. And that doesn't mean that you're not learning. That means that you're coming along for the ride, and you're gonna base that information on engagement. What does that student look like? How is that student presenting? So here's my materials list, my testing list. I'm going to use classroom observation, completed story graph work, maybe videos of the students' production to share back with the whole team to review. And I might tally mark anytime that student uses the AAC system to participate in the story graph lesson. And as a team, we're going to assign tasks to get this work done quickly and efficiently. And we're going to preview the words on the AAC system so that we know where they are. So even though I use AAC most days, I still made sure that right before we started, I remembered, let's see if I can get close enough that you can see. Where go,
Stop.
stop,
Up.
up,
Down.
down, describe,
Slow.
slow, and fast. So I really was looking to see like which words would be helpful within this unit or this lesson. So let me see if I my wall graph here for you. I wanted to give you one other example. So kids with vision impairments and math can be a little bit challenging. So here's just a really simple story graph. CVI, I tried to make my words big and I sort of highlighted them. If you can see, I like made a border around them. That makes it easier to see. And then for kids that touching is the way in which they see. So for kids who are maybe blind or have low vision, I just added, what do we call these? Pipe cleaners. And then stickers. So it's like or you could even use a pin in your classroom, and a pipe cleaner, a sticker, it's like a little gem, and another pipe cleaner so that I could sort of feel the chart, the graph. All right, math teachers, make this better. Any suggestions? What do you do in your classrooms?
The only thing I was going to say was that I like the idea of having the graph where the kids can touch it and that sort of thing. But right now you'd have to have individual ones for each kid. Which
would a gallery walk still be possible if they? No. Okay.
Or at least not in my district.
Okay. Fair. So what could we do to make this COVID friendly?
Well, I was thinking that if you could use a Jamboard, and different Jamboards you can use as different gallery stops. So this way, if the students are doing remote learning, they could just do it through there and add input on each of the Jamboards. And then the classroom students can obviously do the same thing. The teacher could either mimic them on the wall or they can just follow along with the Jamboards themselves.
Awesome.
Slides could work too if Jamboards are new to people.
What did you say? Was that Melinda?
Yeah, sorry. Slides could work just as well as I think it's Jamboards. We did that in an earlier session where we all posted our work on a slide. Yeah.
I also wonder about Padlet. If it'd be possible to sort of make your drawing in Padlet and then you could comment on it there. I'll show you Padlet later. All right.
Jamboard is nice because it's part of the Google Suite. So those of us using Google Classroom obviously makes it a little bit easier.
I heard Jamboard mentioned a bunch of times and I saw it in the presentations today and I was like, note to self, get familiar with Jamboard. So.
Jackie, would you be able to talk about the essential elements? Like I looked at that document really quickly and I realized maybe I should have asked during the last opportunity. Can you tell me, can you just re-explain or tell me what the essential element is and then how that came into play with this lesson?
Yeah, so the essential element is basically the intended outcome for a child that's not meeting the state level proficiency, so or standard. So if you have a child in your class that is operating at a modified grading system, you would look to the essential element rather than the standard. And it's basically a bridge. It's not an identical match, but it's a bridge between what's happening in the general ed classroom to what a child that's following a modified grading system would access. It's sort of their access point to your classroom. Does that make sense?
So is this some, I'm just trying, I don't know if I have any students who meet this right now, but like someone who's really like I teach 5th grade, could this be a student whose success is more at a 1st or 2nd grade level? Or are you thinking, like, I know you've also talked about bigger, like, or more complex students.
Yep. So I think it just depends what's written into the IEP. So So in the IEP, it will indicate whether the student is taking state level testing or if they're taking alternative testing. And also it'll have somewhere in there if there's a math goal or a literacy goal, you sort of look at both to make sure that you're sort of meeting that child where they're at, as well as giving them access. And I think one of the most important things is that there really is no average, right? So it could be that for a child that's considered complicated, like I have so many kids that in some parts of mathematics, they hit the grade level standard, no problem. And then like, particularly when it comes to like spatial awareness and like the picture elements in geometry, and then all of a sudden we get into algebra and those kids dip back down pretty low again. Or it could be completely flipped based on who the student is. So knowing that these are there for all students, and I was doing this story graphing with a 6th grade teacher probably 5 years ago, and she was telling these stories, and a child who was deafblind was in her classroom at the time. And so we were using sort of the tactile graphs to do this together. And she had this aha moment. She was like, I get it. If I use the essential elements to start with all kids, and I'm sort of building that complexity as my entrance activity, then all kids benefit from this idea of the essential concepts that we want them to take away from this unit. And then as it gets harder for some kids, it might stay at the essential element level for other kids. The reason why I picked this particular lesson to do is because in the document that has state standard and matching essential element, it just said not applicable in the essential element section, which happens a lot more at the high school level than it does at the elementary level or middle school level, but it does happen. So I picked this one to sort of challenge myself to say, okay, no excuses. I got to make this applicable somehow. I'm going to give it my A for effort, given that there is no information for me to go on. What you said though before, Melinda, about someone who does like better at a 1st or 2nd grade level. So we used to, as special educators, write into an IEP, like we'd look down at kindergarten, 1st grade, and we would pick a standard from down there and say, okay, like everyone else is working on, distant story graphs, but this kid's gonna work on counting by 5s. And we don't have the right to do that anymore. Yes, there does need to be like a sandwich effect where like, yes, those foundational skills do need to be addressed and worked on for our kids that need that. But also, just like our presenter this morning said, there is no prerequisite for being in a classroom and having access to that content. So we're finding sort of those access points where that child can also, participate within the general ed setting successfully. Does that answer your question? Anything else? Any other thoughts? Talking about math, you guys, has been a labor of love and something that I have learned to embrace. I was one of those kids in school that was like, math, let me go the other way. And now I'm learning to sort of like dig my heels in and enjoy the learning process of math. I think thanks to John Tapper. Okay, so 107, we're doing good on time. So does anyone have something that's coming up in your classroom? We're a pretty small group, so I don't feel like we need to sort of break out further. But does anyone have anything that's coming up that we might be able to brainstorm together as a group using some of these documents? And it could be as simple as like, I know in 2 weeks from now, I'm doing this thing. And then I can help sort of go through the document and you can help me find it and we can play it from there. Melinda.
And if other people have other ideas, I'm in the midst of doing some building concepts with fractions with 5th graders, and we're doing equivalence, which is a tough one, I think. And that will be moving into addition, subtraction of fractions. But right now we're doing equivalence and it's hard.
All right, so I'm going to screen share. And I'm going to go back to my continuum document. So that's under resources, the continuum. And I'm going to go down to 5th grade. Is that what you said? 5th grade? Now, I included in here, just for reference, the language arts ones as well as the math ones, because there are some special educators in the house that probably, when they see one, they're like, can I please have the other? And unfortunately, math is second, so you might want to close your eyes for just 1 second. I'm going to scroll.
Jackie, it's page 55.
Oh, page 55. Okay. I'm not sure I know how to get there faster.
I think just scroll down, but at least we can
Yeah,
you'll know when to stop.
We're going. Close your eyes.
Now, for something like this, fraction equivalence is something they do at the 4th grade. Like, we're building off of that in 5th grade. Do you recommend going back, or is this document meant to do that for me?
Yeah, so there is no more going back.
Okay.
So now when we write IEP goals, when we talk about kids and access to the classroom, this is your starting and end point. Okay. So is there a particular student in mind that might not be at grade level in your class that you can think of? Without sharing names or anything, but yeah, there's. And what might sort of supports be helpful for that child that you know of?
That's something I struggle with, just even in terms of like the physical supports, because like manipulatives and other things, because I've never taught at the elementary level. So I don't even know some of the tools that they use. We certainly do a lot of model drawing, but I have no experience with, Cuisinart rods, or I don't even know what else is used to be honest. I'm going to be really honest.
Oh, that's good.
I am a middle school, high school trained teacher. So we do a lot of drawing, and then, set models can work. I've done that before with fractions. And I have like magnetic fraction that show all the different, the sort of the common partitions or common frac pieces.
Yeah. So I think just looking at this for a second all together, so we've got the linkage levels right here. So on the bottom is initial precursor. So working towards fractions, the very first skill that you need to have is recognizing separateness. And then it goes up, partition sets into equal subsets, partition any shape into equal parts. And it just sort of gets harder from there. So it goes all the way up past the standard. And you've got your big idea, your skills, your concepts. I'm wondering, some of the other math teachers in the house, where might you start with this?
I have been doing a little fraction work in my classroom with my 6th graders, getting them ready to divide fractions. But due to COVID, they lost out on some fraction work last year. Well, some kids feel they did. I don't know. So I handed them Cuisinart rods and just asked them to play with them to see if could they find a rod, and could they find other colored rods that split it in half, and can they split it further? And I actually let them just play to get some sense that things have parts and pieces. And it was a nice start to the lesson. And then I started framing it a little more with, well, what if I had the teal rod? Could I split it in half? And how many unit rods? I called some units. I don't know. I made it up. I didn't know how to use them either. I just kind of made it up as I went along. But kids are starting to understand that, a half can be 3/6 or 4/8. And it's been working. And we also cut apart strips of paper. We just started folding it into a half, or can we fold it in half again? Now, how many pieces would there be? So that's kind of where I started with kids before going into division.
I love that idea of just playing with the rods to begin with, to get a sense of them. And that's something that all kids can do, right? And as it gets harder, you're starting to say like, okay, now can it be broken into parts and pieces? And what would that look like? Some of our kids are even trying to figure out, like, is this a whole or is this part? What is this? And starting maybe even with some real life examples. Fractions, how can you not think of pizza or cake? Like, would you want a whole pizza to yourself or a piece of it? And just sort of drawing in some of those real life examples of where they might see fractions. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I've done the same thing with the fraction, I don't know what they're called, but where you've got a 1 and then the manipulatives, and it's broken all the way up to 12ths, the common ones. Those have been really good for my kids to figure out equivalent, because I could take like 3/4 and put that down and say, can you find something that matches that? It doesn't even have to be the simple one. And each piece of a fraction set, so like 1/2, that is the unit fraction. 1/8, that is the unit fraction. That's the unit we're using in this model with this. So any fraction with a 1 in the numerator is the unit fraction.
Great. One of the things I love about this document is for the kids who, you know, are going to struggle with recognizing that a fraction is part of a whole or wholeness, right? Like just that concept in general, it does lay out things as simple as assemble a simple puzzle to demonstrate pieces of a whole. Use a self-sticking non-adhesive tape, take apart and put together fractional parts of a whole. So just some activities that are pre-thought out for you. And whether or not you like them, you skip them, people find different parts of this document that they enjoy and tend to go there first for their resource. I tend to go first over to the different levels and look at those. And then if I really can't wrap my head around it, I feel like sometimes as a non-math person, looking down at those level tasks help me figure out what am I going for with this task or this concept. Okay.
I had something else to add. I don't know if this is a good time, but I was playing with the idea of a lot of times I ask the kids to tell me what they see, but I wonder about presenting like a shape divided into 4 parts, one's colored in, and I label it and ask them to evaluate it. Like if I labeled it 1/4, what part is shaded? Or if I labeled it wrong and said, what do you guys think? You know, did this person label this picture right? And why do you think? I don't know. I was just playing with that idea of, besides when you get, you know, after you play with some shapes and cut them apart, if they would see it differently, or if you show them 1/3 and then you cut all the thirds and show them 2/6 and it's the same amount of piece, and just start getting them to pretend they're the teacher and see what the work looks like, if that would help them get it.
I think anytime that they have to talk about their thinking, it always seems to help, right?
And a good one with that too is also to divide the shape, like you were using fourths, divide the shape into fourths, but don't make them equal sizes. So they have to tell you why it's not 1/4. Well, it's not 1/4 because the pieces are not equal. That sort of thing.
I also did one of the workshops offered on launches at the beginning of lessons. And there's one launch of which one doesn't belong. And there's 4 different pictures. And one of the examples was with a fraction, and some of the fractions, there were missing parts. They were different sizes, different shapes, different colors. And you just had a class discussion about it. So someone who doesn't know anything about fractions could just say, oh, that top right one is a different color, and they'd be able to participate, where some could be like, well, all the shapes are split into fourths, except for that one that's split into thirds. And there's so many different entry points. There's a really good website that has them all pre-made for you too. So that's a great way to bring in the whole class discussion and like start talking about fractions.
Would you mind sharing that website in our chat?
Yeah, I can do
If you
that.
can get a hold of it, that'd be awesome.
Shauna, I just shared it because that's I have that linked. I use it for warm-ups all the time, and I've tried making my own too. And it's also a great extension to have kids make their own, because they can copy and paste images so easily off the, you know, but they still have to think about why they're creating one. Thanks.
And I've used it in 1st grade and 3rd grade, and like you can really use it across the board.
Thanks. So I'm going to, in the chat, I'm going to relink the Google site that we're all at, and I'm going to take us to the last page of the site for a second. To our reflection. And my hope is that you could share with me or with the group something that you might keep in your teaching, something you might stop, something you're willing to try. And to do that today, we're going to use the Padlet. I'm also going to put that link in the chat as well. But you just go to the plus sign in the bottom right corner, and then you can add a note. You can, I'm going to show you sort of the options. So there's like 3 little dots on a Padlet when you, after you press the bottom plus sign. So you could include a link, a picture. You could just audio record your own voice. You can doodle and draw something. So however you want to share, whatever you're sort of in the mood to put there works for me. But you're just going to sort of reflect a little bit about this session and what you're thinking. The last thing I would add is if you'd be willing, I'm working hard at getting better at this and really take pride in that learning. And so if you'd be willing to put your information, I'd love to send you just a really quick survey on what you thought of this session and how I could make it better in the future. And I'm going to give everybody about 5 minutes to do that, and then we'll sort of conclude all together. Well, something that I'm going to keep doing is collaborating with math teachers. I found that it was excruciating to attempt to make a lesson by myself versus how quickly it goes when you have that collaboration relationship with a co-teacher or someone else that you work with. And I really miss having access to, just sort of getting to know one grade level and that content. In my current job, I work 3rd grade through 12th grade, so I don't get to sort of take a deep dive into any one thing. So it was really helpful to have my husband around to just bounce ideas off of. I love the continuum, UDL, a lot to think about. Yeah, well, thank you guys so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I know that I threw a lot of information at you. I made that website with the hopes that it would be helpful to you in your work and in your collaborative relationships at your schools. If you have any questions or you're like, I just need more information, or I'd love to spend 10 minutes with you to just sort of flesh something out, on my website is my contact information. Please feel free to reach out anytime. My mission in life truly is help all kids be included. And I love that there's so many math teachers here that I have the potential to collaborate with. So thank you guys so much. And I wish you a really happy rest of your day.